Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if your body's internal map gets fuzzy as you get older? Like, does your brain's ability to know where your fingers are change over time? Well, this new study might have some fascinating clues. This research dives into something called body structural representations, or BSRs for short. Think of it as your brain's internal map of your own body, helping you know how different parts are arranged. Now, what is really cool is that scientists have found this map isn't just one thing. It can actually be different depending on what kind of skin is being touched. Specifically, they're looking at glabrous skin, which is the smooth, hairless skin on places like your palms and fingertips, and hairy skin, which covers most of the rest of your body. So, the big question is this. We know our bodies change as we age, and our skin is no different. We lose some of that elasticity, and our nerve endings might not work quite as well. But how does all that affect this internal body map, especially when we're talking about different skin types? Does aging lead to a less clear picture of our own bodies? And if so, does it affect the glabrous and hairy skin maps equally? To figure this out, the researchers did something clever. They used an experiment based on something called the in-between test. Imagine you've got two fingers being gently tapped at the same time. The test asks you to guess how many untouched fingers are squeezed right in between those two spots. It is a neat way to see how well your brain understands the layout of your fingers. They tested two groups, younger adults and healthy older adults. They did this test in two different sessions. One focusing on the smooth glabrous skin of the hand and the other on the hairy skin areas. They used these little buzzing devices called solenoid tappers to lightly touch the fingers. The intensity of the tap was set so everyone could feel it clearly. The important part here is where they placed these tappers. For the glabrous skin session, they placed them on the palm side of the fingers, and for the hairy skin session, they placed them on the back of the fingers. Participants just kept their hand in a box, so they couldn't see what was happening, and then they'd say how many fingers they felt were in between the taps. They also rated how confident they were in their answer. Now, for the exciting part, what did they find? Overall, the older adults weren't quite as accurate as the younger adults. They tended to underestimate the number of fingers in between the tapped ones, especially when the taps were on non-adjacent fingers. Think about tapping your thumb and your pinky finger. There are two fingers in between. Younger adults generally did a better job with these kinds of spaced-out taps. This suggests that for older adults, accessing that internal map of their hand, especially for more spread-out fingers, becomes a bit harder. However, here is where it gets really interesting. When they looked at the different skin types, something neat happened. For both the young and older groups, when taps were on non-adjacent fingers, they were more accurate and estimated higher numbers on the smooth, glabrous skin. Like the palm side of the fingers compared to the hairy skin. This difference between glabrous and hairy skin was actually seen in both age groups. This means that even though older adults as a group struggled a bit more with the overall task, the way their brains processed information from glabrous versus hairy skin seemed to be preserved. The idea is that there are actually different internal maps for different skin types. And this distinction holds up even as we get older. The glabrous skin map seems to be more detailed or easily accessible, especially for judging those wider gaps between fingers. So, what does it all mean? The researchers suggest that while the distinct internal body maps for glabrous and hairy skin remain intact even in older age, the general accessibility of these higher-level maps declines. It is like the main pathway to your body's blueprint gets a bit narrower with age, making it harder to quickly and accurately get the information you need. This is particularly true for the more complex judgments, like figuring out how many fingers are between two widely spaced taps. They think this isn't necessarily because the skin itself is failing drastically, but rather due to changes in the brain that happen with aging. Things like slower nerve signaling or reduced efficiency in brain connections might play a role. What is fascinating is that the reaction times didn't always match the accuracy. Younger adults were slower for the harder tasks, which makes sense. But older adults were sometimes faster when the task got harder, which could actually point to them not fully engaging with the complex spatial information, because accessing it is just more effortful. The key takeaway here is that aging seems to impact the ease of using your body's internal map, but it doesn't erase the fundamental differences between how your brain processes touch from different skin surfaces. The idea that your glabrous skin representation is somehow better or more detailed, especially for tricky spatial tasks, seems to hold true across the lifespan. This is important because it shows that not all aspects of our body representations decline in the same way. So while it is a bit of a bummer that our internal body maps might become less accessible as we age, especially for more complex judgments, it is also reassuring to know that the fundamental way our brains differentiate between touch on smooth versus hairy skin remains pretty robust. This research helps us understand how healthy aging affects our fundamental sense of self and our bodies. Of course, the study looked at healthy older adults. It would be really interesting to see if people with conditions that affect cognitive aging or sensory processing show even more pronounced effects. Future research could also explore if targeted training or interventions can help improve access to these body maps. What do you think about these findings? Does this change how you think about your own sense of touch and your body? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this dive into the mind, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the fascinating world of psychology. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.